If you were to call 999 and ask for an ambulance, it's a paramedic who would be first on the scene. But what's life really like on the front line of our NHS?
Well, after 15 years in the ambulance service, one person who's certainly qualified to tell that story is Dan Farnworth, and he's written a new book, 999, My Life on the Front Line of the Ambulance Service, and that's what it looks like. And he's here now.
Welcome.
It's lovely to see you. That's out tomorrow. But it wasn't your first choice of career, was it?
Well, no, actually, when I left school, I initially went and did a plumbing apprenticeship, which was really great. I was working on the building sites, and then when it got to winter, it was a little bit too cold, so I opted for a career change.
So, well, you went into the 999...
Well, actually, I went into travel agency, selling holidays over the phone.
Right.
And it just wasn't for me, so I applied to work answering the 999 calls. Yeah. And that's how I kind of transitioned.
It went from there, and then you became fully qualified in 2019. And when you were doing the 999 calls, you had an incident in your own life that actually you sort of look back and go, wow, that's made me a better paramedic, having that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I kind of put it down to being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But when I was quite new to the ambulance service, I was actually stabbed. I wasn't working at the time. I was at home. I wasn't at home. I was on a night out. And, you know, the stigma that goes with something like that, you automatically think that person's been doing something wrong. But I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I got stabbed 5 times.
Oh my
but luckily, the ones in the chest didn't go in. They just cut my shirt.
You were very, very lucky.
I lived to tell the tale, yeah.
You said you grew up taking those 999 calls. It made you grow up pretty quickly.
It did, absolutely. I think taking the 999 calls in the call centre is perhaps the hardest job I've ever done. You're answering a high volume of calls, call after call, and often you're left with your memory to, well, with your mind paints a picture of what's really going on. And often the reality is not half as bad as what the mind creates. But it's really difficult.
It is that I find astonishing. My brother had a very, very serious heart attack, and it was only the incredible paramedics and the unbelievable NHS that fixed him so beautifully. But when he called, he was having his heart attack when he called 999, and he managed to get that recording. I don't know why he wanted it, but we all listened to it. And the operator at the other end of the phone was unbelievable.
I think that is what underpins the National Health Service, is the people and the unbelievable people that work there. There's often no denying that the NHS is under a lot of stress and strain, but the people that work for the NHS, like in the call centre, like on the front line of the ambulance, and in fact, people who work in all emergency services and public services, do an extraordinary job.
Well, you never know what your day is going to entail, that's for sure, when you get called out. And one thing's for sure, that the sort of circle of life is no more obvious. It's more obvious than ever in your line of work. And there was a Christmas Day when you were working, as you often have to do, when you sort of had both ends of the spectrum.
That's right. In the book, the chapter's titled One Out, One In. Right. And it sounds a little bit callous, but actually, when you explain the story, that we attended a person in cardiac arrest who tragically died, quite an elderly person, but they did sadly pass away. And after that incident, we had very little time to gather our thoughts. We was back out the door, and the next incident we went to was actually a childbirth. Wow. And it was quite astonishing, and the childbirth wasn't actually that easy because the lady didn't speak English. So we ended up having to kind of act out what to do, and it was like a unplanned game of charades on Christmas Day.
Oh, my gosh, oh, my gosh. And you delivered the baby
We did. Between myself and my colleague, we absolutely did, yeah.
Oh, wow, wow.
What's it like when you, for a brief moment or maybe for a longer period of time, you are so close to someone in their hours of desperate need, when they are wheeled off and go into the hospital? I suppose because of the secrecy rules, I mean, you couldn't find out how they were.
That's right. Patient confidentiality plays a really big part, and that often means we're working for the emergency services, well, specifically the ambulance service. We're able to tell a lot of stories without the ending. Occasionally, we will be able to find out if we happen to know the member of staff that looked after them, but often we never find out, and I'm not sure if that's always a bad thing.
Yeah,
you know, sometimes it's not.
Well, there was one moment when you were called out, and this was in 2015, and this was a horrific story, actually, and this was one that was to have a lasting impact on you and your mental health.
Yeah, basically I was called to an incident which involved a child that had been tragically injured, and ultimately the child eventually passed away. And that child looked just like my children. And I went home that day and I carried it with me. And for some time, I remember thinking about it. I was watching the TV, but I wasn't watching it. I was just staring at it, replaying in my mind what had happened. And eventually I found myself in like a really deep, dark hole, and it felt like the world was passing by over my head. And that stayed with me for a long time. And in fact, it still stays with me today.
You sought help, you spoke to people, which we always say you've got to do. How much support is there, bearing in mind what you see, what you cope with on it, all of you, on a day-to-day basis, all our emergency service? What sort of help is there for you?
Historically, there was not much at all. And over the last 5 years, all the emergency services and the NHS have started to really delve into this, and we've come a very long way. There are counsellors available, there's peer support available in some services, and we've come such a long way, but there's still a long way to go. We've kind of built the foundations, and we need to keep building on that. And
with you know, everything that's in the book and everything that we know that you guys go through on a daily basis, it always astonishes me that you can also be spat at, you can be abused. You say that the uniform is not a suit of armour. That's
right. And unfortunately, it does happen. You know, sometimes it's because somebody's drunk, sometimes it can be down to the fact that they're confused due to a medical problem. But ultimately, it is an aspect of the job that we can't steer away from, and it does happen.
But you do recommend it as a career?
I do. It was and that's ultimately the emphasis of the book, is that it is one of the best jobs out there. I wouldn't want to do anything else. I do carry a lot of baggage as a result of it, but it's still the best job in the world, and I work with some of the most amazing people that you could ever imagine, and they're up and down the country right now doing the job as we speak.
Absolutely, and thank you for everything you've done and that your colleagues continue to do. The book is there that Phil was talking about, and that is out tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We did actually hear that quite recently there's new financial support for students who want to be paramedics, radiographers, physiotherapists, hopefully a whole flood of people into
step in the right direction. Hope we can start attracting a lot of people from a full range of backgrounds, which will really underpin what the ambulance service and the NHS wants to be.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you.